The Alpha King rejected his pregnant mate and left her to freeze. 5 years later, he returns to demand. The cold wind blew harshly across the northern mountains, carrying the sharp scent of snow and pine. The forest was silent except for the faint rustle of frozen leaves and the distant howl of wolves. Amid the biting cold, a lone figure moved carefully through the drifting snow. Her cloak, once vibrant, hung in tatters over her shoulders. Her boots, worn and cracked, left shallow prints in the white powder. She was exhausted, but she could not stop. Not now. Not while the life inside her depended on her courage. Years ago she had been chosen by him, the Alpha King. His reputation stretched across the lands like fire. He was feared, revered, and obeyed. To love him was to risk everything, yet she had given her heart freely, believing in the strength of their bond. But the night he discovered her pregnancy changed everything. He had looked at her with a mixture of fury and fear, his golden eyes burning with an emotion she could not understand. "You will not bring a child into this world," he had said, his voice sharp as ice. "This bloodline carries a curse. I cannot allow it." She had begged him, her hands trembling as she clutched his coat. "Please, I am carrying your child. Your blood runs through me. Don't cast us away." But he had turned his back on her. The very next morning he left her at the edge of the kingdom, where the mountains met the forest, and disappeared without another word. The snow fell that day, heavy and merciless, and she had shivered as the realization settled deep in her chest. He had abandoned her. Now, 5 years later, the memory of that winter haunted her as vividly as the snowflakes on her hair. The forest had become her home. She had survived, not only because of her will, but because of the mysterious power that had awakened in her blood after she was left to freeze. The magic was subtle but strong. She could feel the wind bending to her presence, the snow shifting beneath her feet to guide her, and the trees bending protectively as she passed. Her child, now a bright and fearless 5-year-old boy, ran ahead of her along the narrow forest path. His laughter rang like music through the silent woods, innocent and unafraid. "Mother, look," he called, pointing to a frozen stream where the ice had formed delicate patterns like lace. She smiled, her heart warming despite the cold. "You are too fast," she called, catching up to him. "Wait for me." He stopped, grinning, and took her hand. The bond between them was more than blood. It was a promise, one she had made to herself when the Alpha King abandoned them. They would survive, they would thrive, and no one would ever control their lives again. As they continued, the forest grew darker, the trees stretching higher and closer together, casting long shadows across the snow. The air grew thick, charged with magic and something else, an unease that made her skin prickle. She sensed it before she saw it, movement in the shadows, silent and deliberate. Her hand tightened around her son's, and she whispered a protective charm under her breath. From the darkness emerged a figure, cloaked and tall but not threatening. The stranger knelt in the snow, holding out a hand wrapped in warmth and light. "You should not travel alone in this forest," the figure said, voice calm, almost gentle, carrying the authority of someone who had lived many winters. She stepped back, cautious, her body shielding her child. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Why are you here?" "I am a friend," the stranger replied. "I saw you in the storm yesterday. You were not safe." Her instincts screamed at her to flee. She had learned to trust only herself, the wind, and the magic in her blood. But something about the figure's calm presence made her hesitate. There was no malice in the voice, no cruelty in the eyes, just observation. "I said no," she said finally, her voice steady. "We can survive on our own." "Perhaps," the stranger said softly, "but survival is easier with allies." She studied him carefully. His eyes, dark and deep, seemed to see beyond the forest, beyond the snow, and perhaps even into her very soul. For a moment she considered refusing him, but the storm approaching from the north left little choice. "Fine," she said, "but we move at dawn. No tricks." The stranger nodded once and stepped aside, allowing her to continue along the hidden path deeper into the forest. The boy, curious, glanced at the stranger, but she quickly tugged him closer. "Do not speak," she warned. "Trust is earned, not given." That night they camped in a hollow beneath an ancient tree, its roots forming a natural shelter. She had learned over the years to make fires in the snow that burned long and bright without smoke. The boy sat near her, drawing pictures in the snow with a stick, while she watched the stranger in silence. He had not moved from the edge of the clearing, observing, patient and quiet. The forest night was full of whispers. Creatures of shadow and magic moved unseen, and the wind carried warnings she could almost understand. Her blood thrummed with the power she had awakened, the power that had saved her and her child from the cold and from death, but it also reminded her that danger was never far. Finally, the stranger spoke. "You are strong," he said, "but not all strength comes from survival. Some comes from understanding." She looked at him sharply. "Do you know who I am?" "I know of you," he said. "The woman cast out by the Alpha King, the one who survived against the odds, and the child you protect, he carries the blood of a king." Her breath caught. No one had ever spoken of her child so openly. Not the villagers, not the exiles, not even the wolves who watched from the shadows. "Why do you tell me this?" she demanded. "Because soon," the stranger said, "he will be sought, and so will you." Her mind raced. The Alpha King. Could he have survived all this time? Could he possibly have returned to reclaim what he thought he had lost? She had forced herself to bury the memory, the pain, the betrayal. And now, the past was moving closer, like the storm that approached the mountains. She felt a chill deeper than the winter night. "We will be ready," she said, voice firm. "Whatever comes, we will face it." The stranger's eyes softened for a brief moment. "Be careful. The king is not the man you remember." She did not reply, but her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and something else. Longing she thought had died in the snow. The wind moaned through the branches, carrying echoes of promises broken, of love cast aside, and of a destiny that had been delayed, not denied. As dawn broke, the forest was bathed in pale light, frost glinting like diamonds on the trees. The boy ran ahead, laughing, unaware of the invisible threads of danger tightening around them. She watched him, heart full, knowing that she would do anything to protect him, even if it meant confronting the ghosts of her past. And then she saw it, footprints in the snow, leading toward them from the northern mountains. Large, deliberate, unmistakable. The Alpha King had returned. Her breath froze in her chest. Memories of rejection, of betrayal, of bitter winter nights alone surged back. Anger flared, then a darker, quieter emotion, fear. Not for herself, but for her child. He did not deserve the chaos of a father who had once abandoned him. The stranger stepped beside her, silent, watching the footprints with an understanding that made her uneasy. "He is coming," the stranger said simply. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling only slightly. "And he will not find the same woman he left." The snow swirled around them, wind biting and relentless, as if the forest itself held its breath. The past and the future were colliding, and the storm that had carried her to survival was now bringing the force that had once destroyed her life. She knelt briefly in the snow, touching her child's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his small hand in hers. "Be brave," she whispered. "No matter what comes, we are stronger than fear, stronger than the winter, stronger than him." The boy looked up at her, eyes bright and trusting, unaware of the full weight of the moment. She drew in a deep breath, standing tall, her cloak wrapped tightly around her. Magic hummed beneath her skin, snowflakes rising to meet her gaze as if the forest itself was ready to obey her will. And then, in the distance, a shadow moved across the frost. Tall, commanding, and impossible to ignore. A figure cloaked in white fur, golden eyes glinting like fire through the mist. The Alpha King. The wind carried his presence before he appeared fully, and she felt the same pull she had felt the first day he had rejected her. A pull of power, danger, and something more forbidden. a love that refused to die. Her heart hammered. Her child clutched her hand. And in that moment, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The forest fell silent. The snow swirled violently, and the past had finally returned to demand what it thought it owned. 5 years had passed since the winter that had nearly claimed her life. The snow of that night still lingered in her memories, sharp as ice against her skin. But she had survived. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. Her child, a boy now 5 years old, had become the center of her world. His laughter filled the hidden forest where they lived, and his curiosity made her smile even in the darkest days. They had found refuge in a secret place deep within the mountains, a forest thick with ancient trees and enchanted streams. The forest had welcomed them as if it had been waiting for their arrival. Trees bent protectively when the wind blew harshly, and the snow seemed to drift gently rather than fall harshly, as if respecting the life she had nurtured. Over the years, she had learned the language of the forest, the whispers of the wind, the shift of the snow underfoot, and the quiet guidance of creatures that roamed unseen. Her son, named Alaric, was a spirited child with his father's golden eyes, sharp and inquisitive. But he also carried the warmth and courage of his mother. He could climb the tallest trees, track the smallest creatures, and sense the dangers that lurked beyond the forest's protective shadows. She had taught him to listen to his instincts, to trust the magic in the forest, and to respect the power that flowed in both the land and their bloodline. She often watched him as he played, a quiet smile touching her lips. "One day you will understand what it means to be brave," she whispered, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "And one day you will understand the world is bigger than these trees. But for now, stay here. Stay safe." Alaric nodded, his young eyes full of trust. "I will, mother. I will be careful." Yet, as peaceful as life had become, the shadows of the past were never far. Rumors had begun to drift through the lands beyond the forest, rumors of the Alpha King, the man who had abandoned her, stirring again in the north. His name carried fear and respect, even in lands he no longer ruled. She had not expected him to return, but deep inside, a small part of her had always feared it. It was on a cold morning when she first sensed it, the subtle change in the air, the tension in the forest. Birds flew silently past the treetops, and the snow drifted sideways as if pushed by invisible hands. Her child was the first to notice. "Mother," Alaric said, tugging at her cloak, "someone is coming." She knelt beside him, placing her hand over his heart. "Calm yourself," she whispered. "Listen, feel." They waited. The forest was quiet for a moment, almost holding its breath. Then through the snow and mist a figure appeared. Not a shadow or a stranger this time. It was him, the Alpha King. Strong, imposing, his golden eyes piercing through the white haze, his presence demanding the forest's attention. Her heart stilled for a moment, caught between fury and disbelief. He had returned not as a rumor but as a living, breathing reality, and he had come for them. He did not rush forward. He walked with control, his gaze fixed on her and her son. There was a tension in the air that was almost electric. "You survived," he said finally, his voice both commanding and strange with emotion. I thought you would not." She rose, standing tall before him, the forest and the snow her shield. "And you were wrong," she said, her voice steady, though her heart trembled. "We are alive, we thrive, we do not need you." He studied her for a long moment, the flicker of something unreadable passing through his expression. "You are stronger than I imagined," he admitted quietly, almost to himself. And his gaze softened, falling on Alaric. "He is extraordinary." Her hand instinctively went to her son's shoulder. "He is mine," she said firmly. "Not yours. You left him, you left us." The Alpha King's jaw tightened. Pride and regret warred within him. "I left to protect you," he said finally. "The blood in your veins, the child you carry, it is cursed. I could not allow it to bring ruin to this land or to you." She shook her head. "You did not protect us. You abandoned us." His shoulders stiffened. I did what I believed necessary, he said, voice cold now. But I did not know you would survive. You would rise. Her eyes narrowed. Rise, yes, I have risen, I have lived, I have fought, and I have protected my son, alone, without you. Alaric stepped closer to his mother, sensing the tension. Mother, who is he? He is a man who forgot his duty, she said, kneeling slightly to meet his eyes. But he is not going to hurt you. The Alpha King's gaze softened at the boy's fearless eyes. I seek nothing but answers, he said, and perhaps reconciliation. Her laugh, bitter and low, echoed in the forest. Reconciliation. After 5 years of betrayal, you come back and speak of reconciliation. He flinched slightly at the venom in her voice but did not retreat. I did what I thought was right, he said. But now I must see the truth with my own eyes. I must face the consequences. She looked at him, the man she had once loved and once feared. The weight of memories pressed down on her, nights of warmth and laughter, moments of trust and tenderness, followed by the cold betrayal of that winter. And now he stood before her, claiming a right he had forfeited years ago. The forest seemed to respond to the tension. Snowflakes drifted slowly, unnaturally, as if frozen in time. Trees leaned toward them, their shadows stretching long and dark. She could feel the power she had cultivated over the years, her connection to the forest, the magic that had sustained them, rising in anticipation. You are not the same man, she said finally, her voice calm but cutting. And I am not the same woman, he nodded. I know, he said, and that is why I must try for both of you and for me. The boy looked between them, sensing the invisible threads of tension that tied their lives together. Mother, do you trust him? He asked quietly. She hesitated, the weight of her decision pressing down. Trust is earned, she said, and even then it is never complete. But we will listen, we will watch, and we will decide our own fate. The Alpha King took a step closer, hands raised in a gesture of peace, but his eyes never left theirs. I do not ask for blind forgiveness, he said. I ask only for a chance to prove that I am not the man I once was. She studied him, the man who had caused her so much pain, the father of her child, the king who had ruled her heart with fear. And for the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself a flicker of doubt, because despite everything, a part of her still remembered the warmth of his presence, the strength of his arms, and the fire in his eyes. But she could not let the past dictate their future. Not her son, not herself. You will have to prove it, she said. Actions speak louder than words. You will see what we have built and you will understand what it means to survive without you. He nodded again, acceptance in his eyes. I will, he said. And perhaps together we can face what is coming. The world beyond these forests, it will not forgive weakness. And I see now you are not weak. Not you, not him. Her gaze fell to her son, who smiled up at her, trust shining in his eyes. She took a deep breath, feeling the forest around them, feeling the magic in her veins. She was ready to face the Alpha King, not as the scared girl of 5 years ago, but as a woman of power, resilience, and unwavering love for her child. The snow shifted around them suddenly, and a cold wind howled through the trees. The Alpha King's golden eyes narrowed. Something is coming, he said, his voice low and urgent. Not all threats are human, not all dangers can be seen. She nodded, her own instincts screaming. We are ready, she said. Whatever comes, we will survive, together. For a long moment the three of them stood in silence, the snow swirling in their faces, the wind carrying the promise of change. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next move in a game far larger than any of them. And then, without warning, the trees shivered violently, and a dark shadow moved at the edge of the clearing. Something unnatural, something powerful was approaching. The boy clutched his mother's hand, and the Alpha King's hand moved to the hilt of his sword, instincts honed from years of ruling and battle. The shadow paused, just beyond the reach of the snow's pale light. Its presence was heavy, filled with ancient malice and dark intent. The forest whispered warnings, but no one spoke. All three waited, hearts pounding, aware that this was only the beginning. The forest had grown quiet after the first signs of the dark shadow that had appeared at the edge of the clearing. Snowflakes drifted lazily, settling on branches and the ground, but the usual peace of the hidden forest was gone. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch, seemed amplified, as if the woods themselves were warning them of danger. The Alpha King stood slightly ahead, his golden eyes sharp and alert, body tense like a coiled spring. He had not expected the mother to survive with her son so well, nor had he expected her power to grow so rapidly. She was no longer the frightened girl he had once cast aside. She was a force, alive with the forest's magic, with the survival skills he had never imagined she would master alone. "Mother," Alaric whispered, tugging at her cloak, his small hand trembling. "It's coming closer." She placed her hand on his shoulder, kneeling to meet his gaze. "Be brave," she said softly, her voice steady. "We are together. Nothing can harm us if we stay united." The Alpha King's gaze fell on her. His eyes softened for a moment, revealing a flicker of the man he used to be, the man who had loved her. But that moment passed quickly, replaced by resolve. "Whatever comes," he said quietly, "we face it as one, you, your son, and I together." She did not reply, though her heart skipped a beat. Together. The word felt strange, foreign, and yet necessary. The shadow emerged again, this time moving faster. It was not human. Its form shifted like smoke, dark and undefined, and it carried a chill that made the snow freeze where it passed. Her magic reacted instinctively, curling around her like protective flames, sensing danger before it even arrived. "You see it now," the Alpha King said, his voice low, almost reverent. "The curse I warned you of, it is not gone. It has waited for the wrong moment." She narrowed her eyes, watching the darkness coil closer. "We will not fail," she said. "You may have power, but I have survived everything without you, and now we are ready." The shadow lunged suddenly, faster than the eye could follow, and the forest seemed to tremble at its approach. The boy gasped, instinctively moving behind his mother, clutching her cloak. But she stood firm, summoning the magic she had honed over 5 long years. The wind obeyed her, swirling into a protective barrier around them. Snow and ice rose, forming spikes and walls that slowed the creature. The Alpha King drew his sword, its blade catching the dim light that filtered through the trees. He moved with precision, cutting through the edges of the shadow, each strike causing it to hiss like wind through icy caverns. His movements were precise, but he knew he could not fight alone. The mother's magic, combined with his strength, created a balance neither of them had expected. "Keep close to me, Alaric," she said, her voice firm. "Do not move from our side." The boy nodded, gripping her hand tightly, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. He had always known the forest held magic, but tonight he realized the danger could be real and close. Yet he also felt the power of his mother and the Alpha King around him, and it gave him courage. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of movement, magic, and steel. The shadow advanced, testing their defenses, shifting its shape to find weaknesses. The mother's powers grew stronger with every attempt, her connection to the forest allowing her to anticipate the creature's moves. The Alpha King's strikes became more coordinated with her magic, each of them sensing the other's movements with an unspoken rhythm. During a brief pause, the creature recoiled, retreating slightly as if it sensed their combined strength. The mother took the moment to catch her breath, feeling her heart pound from fear, exhaustion, and something deeper, something that stirred when the Alpha King stood beside her, golden eyes watching, protective and unyielding. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said quietly, his voice carrying both awe and a subtle remorse. "The child, he has your fire, and you have grown beyond what I feared." She looked at him, her gaze sharp, refusing to soften. "Do not speak of fear," she said. "I survived because of myself, not because of you." He flinched slightly, the words hitting him like a sudden winter wind. Yet he understood the truth in them. He had abandoned her, but now, standing beside her, he realized she had become more than he could have ever imagined. She was unstoppable. Alaric tugged at her cloak, interrupting the tense moment. "Mother, it's moving again." The shadow surged forward, its form now clearer. An ancient creature born of darkness and curse, eyes like coals burning with hatred. The forest itself seemed to react, the trees bending and swaying, snow falling in a heavy curtain as if trying to separate them from the intruder. "Stand behind me," she shouted, placing her hands on the snow-covered ground. Magic surged from her fingertips, spreading across the clearing like a river of light. The creature hissed and recoiled, but it was relentless. The Alpha King joined her side, his sword glowing faintly, the power of his lineage amplifying her magic. Together they formed a circle of defense, the boy safely in the center, his small hands gripping a piece of enchanted wood she had given him for protection. "You cannot defeat us," she shouted, voice echoing through the forest. "We are bound by more than blood and magic. We are bound by survival," the shadow shrieked, a sound that made the snow tremble. Its attacks became wild, desperate, but their combined power was greater than it had anticipated. Slowly, carefully, they pushed it back, their movements synchronized, the rhythm of attack and defense becoming almost like a dance of shadow and desire, of power and control, of past wounds and emerging trust. For a brief moment, the mother caught the Alpha King's gaze. No words were spoken, but in that instant, both understood the unspoken truth. The past could not be erased, but together they could face the present. And perhaps, in facing it together, something long buried could be awakened again. The shadow wailed one final time before dissolving into mist, retreating into the forest's depths. The snow began to settle again, silent and serene, as if the storm had never come. Alaric stepped forward, eyes shining. Did we win?" She knelt beside him, brushing the snow from his hair. "Yes," she said, "but remember, we must always be ready. The world beyond this forest is full of danger, and the past has a way of finding us." The Alpha King sheathed his sword, breathing heavily, yet his eyes never left her. "You have proven your strength," he said softly, "stronger than I ever imagined. And your son, he is extraordinary. You have created a life that is unbreakable." Her heart ached at his words, a mixture of anger and longing. "You left us," she said quietly. "Do not mistake this for forgiveness." He nodded, understanding the truth in her voice. "I do not ask for forgiveness," he said. "I ask only for a chance to be part of what we have built, to be present." She studied him, the golden light of dawn reflecting on the snow, casting long shadows across the clearing. The tension between them was still raw, but something had shifted. The past had been confronted, at least partially, and a fragile understanding began to form. Suddenly, the forest trembled again. Not like before, not as an attack, but as a warning. The trees groaned, and a strange fog crept along the ground, curling around their feet. She felt it first, a prickling at the edge of her magic, and then the Alpha King stiffened beside her. "This is not over," he said, voice low. "Whatever that shadow was, it was only a scout. Something darker, older is coming, and we must be ready." Her eyes met his, sharp and unwavering. "Then we prepare," she said. "We fight together if we must, but remember, I will always stand first for my son. Always." He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect and understanding. "And I will not stand in your way," he said. "But do not think I will turn from what I am either. We are equals here in this moment." Alaric looked between them, sensing the unspoken tension. "Mother, father," he asked quietly, though neither had claimed the title. She smiled faintly, brushing his hair back. "We are allies," she said simply. "For now." The snow swirled again, heavier this time, a storm approaching from the northern mountains. The forest seemed alive, shifting and bending as if preparing for something far greater than any one person could face alone. The Alpha King looked at her, and for the first time his voice softened completely. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we will face it together. not as king and abandoned mate but as guardians, as protectors, perhaps one day as a family. She met his gaze, holding it, feeling the weight of 5 years of survival, betrayal, and growth between them. Her heart beat fast, caught between old memories and a dangerous new hope. And then from the darkness of the forest, a low rumble echoed, a sound older than the mountains themselves, carrying with it the promise of a challenge that would test every bond, every power, and every heart in ways they could not yet imagine. The forest had grown restless. Even the tallest trees, ancient and unshakable, bent slightly as though bowing to an unseen presence. The snow fell thick and heavy, swirling with an unnatural force that hinted at the arrival of something far older and darker than anything the mother, her son, or the Alpha King had faced before. Alaric clutched his mother's hand tightly, his small body pressed close to hers. "Mother, it's bigger than before," he whispered, eyes wide. She nodded, her own hand steadying him. "Yes, but we are ready," she said, her voice calm though her heart pounded. "We have each other, and together we are stronger than any shadow." The Alpha King stepped beside them, his golden eyes scanning the forest, sensing the darkness that approached. "This is no ordinary threat," he said. "It is a force tied to my bloodline, a curse I thought long gone. It will test everything, our strength, our trust, and our hearts." She met his gaze. The tension between them had softened over the last hours of struggle, but it still lingered, sharp and unyielding. "We face it together," she said, her voice firm. "No one stands alone today, not you, not me, not him." She glanced at Alaric. "Do you understand, son?" He nodded, gripping her hand tighter. "I understand. We are together, always." The forest trembled again, the snow now swirling violently, and the dark force emerged fully. It was massive, an entity that seemed made of shadows and frost, eyes glowing with ancient malevolence. Its roar shook the mountains, and the ground beneath them trembled. Even the Alpha King's sword seemed to hum with unease. "Stand firm," the mother shouted, raising her hands as magic surged from her fingertips. Snow and ice spiraled into a protective circle around them. Her magic, honed over 5 years of survival and solitude, merged with the Alpha King's strength, creating a barrier that pulsed like living light against the encroaching darkness. The creature lunged, testing their defenses, and the Alpha King met it with steel and power, his strikes precise, calculated, and unyielding. But the creature was relentless, moving faster than the eye could follow, its form shifting, striking from every direction. "You are strong," it hissed, its voice like cracking ice, "but your strength will not save you. Your bond, your love will fail." The mother's eyes narrowed. "Love does not fail," she said firmly. "It protects, it strengthens, and it never abandons those it holds dear." Alaric watched, small but fearless as his mother and father, though he had not yet given the title, stood together against the darkness. He felt the warmth of their combined power, a shield stronger than fear itself. He raised the piece of enchanted wood she had given him, feeling it vibrate with magic as he stepped forward. "Be careful," his mother shouted. "Stay behind me." But the boy's courage was undeniable. He pointed the wood at the shadow, and a beam of light shot from it, connecting with the mother's magic and the Alpha King's sword. The three forces combined, striking at the shadow with a strength it had not anticipated. The dark entity shrieked, recoiling, and the forest seemed to breathe with relief at the first true strike of resistance. The battle raged on for what felt like hours. Snow and shadows collided, magic and steel danced together, and the Mother and Alpha King moved in a rhythm almost instinctive, their bond of trust growing with every coordinated strike. Each movement carried not only strength but also emotion, anger, longing, and a fragile hope that had begun to bloom despite past betrayals. At one moment the creature struck toward Alaric, faster than they could react. Without hesitation, the mother threw herself between them, magic exploding from her hands, shielding her son with a force so powerful it sent snow flying like storm-driven arrows. The Alpha King moved at the same instant, striking the creature with his sword, pushing it back with all his might. Breathing heavily, she looked at him, golden eyes meeting golden eyes, and realized that fear and anger had faded. All that remained was trust, raw and undeniable. "We are stronger together," she said, her voice soft, almost intimate, though their surroundings were still filled with danger. He nodded, and in that instant the bond between them felt renewed, not as king and abandoned mate, but as partners, equals, guardians. There was no room for doubt, only the clarity of purpose and the fire of survival. The shadow recoiled again, weakened but still alive, and it let out a final, piercing scream before retreating into the mountains, leaving only a swirling mist in its wake. The forest slowly returned to silence, snow drifting gently as if nothing had happened, though the air remained thick with residual magic and tension. Alaric ran to his mother, hugging her tightly. "We did it," he said, voice full of wonder and relief. She hugged him back, feeling both exhaustion and pride. "Yes, we did," she said softly. "And remember, this is only the beginning. We must always be ready." The Alpha King sheathed his sword, his chest rising and falling as he took deep, steady breaths. His gaze remained on her, and for the first time in years, he allowed a vulnerability to show. "I feared I had lost you forever," he said quietly. "But I see now I was wrong. You are not only alive, but you are stronger than I ever imagined." She looked at him, her eyes softening just slightly, but her voice remained firm. "I survived without you, and I will protect my son no matter what. Remember that." He nodded, accepting her words, understanding them fully. "I will not forget," he said. "I will honor it. And I will honor you." A long silence followed, the three of them standing in the quiet aftermath of battle. The forest seemed to exhale, as if recognizing their victory and the balance they had restored. And though danger still lingered in the world beyond, for this moment they were safe, together. The mother glanced at her son, whose golden eyes mirrored the Alpha King's. "He is remarkable," she whispered, "stronger than anyone could imagine. And yet he is gentle, brave, and full of light." The Alpha King's gaze softened. "He carries our blood and our legacy. We have a chance to guide him, to protect him, and to shape a future free of the shadows that once haunted us." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her heart she had not felt for years. "Perhaps now we can begin again," she said, "not forgetting the past but using it to build a future that is ours." The snow swirled gently around them, the sun breaking through clouds to touch the forest with light. For the first time in years there was hope, not just survival. Hope for love, for family, and for a life reclaimed from betrayal and darkness. The Alpha King stepped closer, hesitating for only a moment before bowing his head slightly. "I do not ask for your forgiveness," he said softly, "but I ask for a chance to stand by your side, not as a king demanding loyalty, but as a man seeking redemption." She studied him, the weight of years and pain reflected in her eyes, but also the strength of what she had become. "Actions speak louder than words," she said. "Show me, and perhaps trust can be rebuilt." He nodded, understanding the unspoken agreement. They would face the future together, step by step, proving themselves not through titles or power, but through courage, love, and protection of what mattered most, the family they had created against all odds. Alaric tugged at her hand. "Mother, father, are we really safe now?" She smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his face. "We are safe for now," she said, "and as long as we stay together, we can face anything." The Alpha King looked at them both, golden eyes full of something unspoken. "Together," he said, his voice carrying strength, resolve, and a promise. The snow continued to fall gently around them, blanketing the forest in silence and peace. The past had left scars, the darkness had challenged them, and the future remained uncertain. But for now, they were whole. The mother, her son, and the Alpha King stood together, three hearts bound by survival, trust, and the fragile bloom of love. And though the wind whispered of challenges still to come, they faced it with courage. knowing that nothing could break the bond they had forged in the fires of betrayal and the snow of hardship. The forest held its breath one last time, then exhaled, leaving them standing on the frozen ground, bathed in sunlight, as the shadow of the past faded behind them.